All right.
All right. Ready to rock?
Ready to go? Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready
Sweet.
to go.
Awesome. Well, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Mr. Mullins. And I want to tell you that you find in your lives there are moments where you get moved forward in your way of thinking. For me, that's as a teacher in my pedagogy. And there's been sometimes it comes really slowly and you just notice small things and you make tiny adjustments, and over time you grow into a new version of yourself. Other times it happens all at once, where you have a moment of epiphany, you see something, you hear something, you're affected by something. I've had the chance to hear Mr. Mullins speak on Chronicle of the Deaf Foretold twice, and both times that I've heard him, it's changed the way I think about the text. It's changed the way I teach. Back in 2005, wow. This guy he almost took my job, I have to say. I left Kenner for a year to pursue my now wife. She was out studying in BC, and he arrived at Kenner in the year that I wasn't here, and I came back and we got to work together the rest of our careers, which was fantastic. But I got to see him teach this novel, and at the time I have to say I was underwhelmed by the text. I was very lukewarm to it. I read it and I'm just like, I don't get it. Why are people so enamored with this book? Frankly, it's boring. It's mostly plotless. It's, in a way, characterless. A lot of the characters are just characterizations. They're just flat surfaces, and here's the character, and this is what they did, and this is where they went, and this is what they said. And then I started piecing the different chapters together, and I was just feeling a little bit disconnected from the text. And there are, in your teaching career, there are some texts that you're going to feel hyper-connected to, and other ones not so much. And then there's some that are incredible, like Hamlet, which I've gone through waves of love and hate for that. But I found with this book, I just felt a little bit directionless and rudderless with it. And Mr. Mullins shared his thoughts on the text, and I suddenly got it. I understood, and there was this moment of crystallization. And so I invited him back on the laurels of that first lecture maybe 5 years ago. And like an avid university level student coming in, I just forgot about marks and forgot about school and forgot about learning, and just cared about connection with text, with idea, with enlightenment, or advancing my own knowledge. And there's just this moment, and I wish desperately that I'd recorded that session, because there was something, I have to say, frankly magical about the delivery. It was just an ordinary, mundane day of teaching students. But there was something, and no one noticed, no one said, oh, that was magical, or, there wasn't this like big revelation to maybe some of the students. But for me, there was just this moment of like blissful thought combined with just the everyday normalcy. And I thought, how fitting is that when we're looking at magical realism? Nice. So I've invited Mr. Mullins back, and comically, in this man's career of how many years? 25?
30
years?
Yeah.
In his career of 30 years, I have never seen him prepare 3 full pages of notes for a lecture. His notes are normally like 3 bullets, and that'll carry him for the entire period. He's actually got copious amounts of notes. So thank you, Mr. Mullins, for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you for taking time to think about a text that I know you really connect with, and I'm really, really excited to hear what you have to say on the subject. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say that Mr. Thompson got a pretty sweet deal when he went out to Vancouver to chase his lovely wife, because he got his job back, and he got married to a lovely woman. So thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, for that very, very, very generous introduction. And I promise you that there will be very few epiphanies in the room today. Thank you to give me an opportunity to be with this group of students as well, Mr. Thompson, because my memories of you are largely based in your first year or so at Kenner, and going to your schools and talking to you about IB. And the reality of the timing of my retirement was that I recognized that I was going to, miss an opportunity to be with what I have heard from everybody that I have talked to, and this does not surprise me in the least. A really, really cool and engaged group of students. So it's a real pleasure to be here and at least have a little sliver of your grade 12 experience. The second reason why I'm grateful to be here is that that my relationship with Garcia Marquez is almost 45 years old. I'm going to turn 60, and I first was introduced to Marquez as a first-year student at Trent University. I had a wonderful professor, Pradeep Bandeyapade, and he was teaching a course in East Asian sociology and development. And he would pace up and down the room telling us about all these economic and sociological theories, and he would break into a sweat, and he would just fire out all these incredible ideas, and we loved him for it. And he was really, really neat. And he was, the course at Trent was kind of like what you guys are experiencing. It was a course that was really trying to make connections between the different courses that you were studying. And so when he said, folks, you really, to understand a people or a culture, you should really start by reading their best authors. And that seemed counterintuitive to us. Because, frankly, even though we were studying literature, we didn't have a lot of faith that the study of the novel could produce anything which we would recognize as social change or value. So it was cool to hear that. And it also prepared us because we knew, because of the integrated way in which that program was structured, that we were going to be introduced to some of those great authors in our literature and development course. And so my second encounter with Marquez came about a year later when we read another wonderful story by him. In fact, the story that garnered him the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1972, called 100 Years of Solitude. I don't know if any of you guys have researched Marquez's career, but that was his first great novel, considered in the opus of very fine novels, and also an important novel as it came from the non-Western world. We had to write a paper on Marquez, and I worked at it, and I worked at it, and I worked at it, and I realized that I had what some of you may recognize. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term imposter syndrome. Has anybody ever heard of that? Does anybody want to try and, yeah, Shernick?
Okay, so imposter syndrome is basically where you feel like you kind of don't fit into the situation at all.
Yeah, and so here we were studying this great Colombian novel as predominantly white Western students, and it seemed really out of place and not really any of our business to think critically about it. And so we had to give ourselves permission to do that. But I realized as I was trying to write this paper, pardon my French, I didn't know what the F to say. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how I could start. I didn't recognize much of what was happening in the novel, and I felt kind of like, if any of you guys have traveled to other cultures, I felt like that person who hasn't been prepared at all for the cultural complexity that he or she may see when they come to a country or a part of the world where the ideas and the concepts of how to live and think are very different. So that's a long-winded way of saying thank you. So Marquez, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who passed away relatively recently, was, as you may know, an important Latin American journalist, primarily, an author of many novels, all in Spanish, to be translated. So I'd like to start with a little bit about making a connection between Marquez and history. Because I think as global citizens, that this novel can potentially offer you a segue into an understanding of some radically different historical experiences that may lie really very much outside your own experience. And some people think that is something to be avoided. And I, from the depths of my heart, truly believe that is something to be sought and quested for, because the world is complex, and writers are amongst the people in our midst who face that complexity and help us understand it. I mean, scientists do too, of course, and many other people, but certainly authors do. And if you're a student of North American history, you might know that at the turn of the century into the 20s and 30s, and especially around the 20s and 30s, there came in American culture this idea of the Harlem Renaissance. Has anybody ever heard of that? Has anybody ever heard? Yeah. What do you know about it?
Like a black movement kind of thing?
Yeah. Do you want to know anything about why or what the movement was trying to do? Okay, but you're absolutely right. It was a movement in the United States primarily, but also for the diaspora of African, North American, and European people to reclaim and celebrate black contributions, which had been largely ignored. The same thing was happening in Latin America. And so you have this interest starting in around just post-war, of this idea of trying to come to grips and understand Latin American history and Latin American cultural and economic and religious experience differently. So Marquez is born into that milieu, that energy, that change that's happening in Latin America, that would later become the decolonial movements that you may have talked about or discussed or even know about in your own or your family's experiences. So if you subscribe to I would call it kind of a historical cliche, that history is written by the victors, right? You guys have heard this? The winners get to write history. So in that version of history, the conquistadors come to the Americas and bring their faith and economic ideas, their political ideas, their military might, and they pacify and save the indigenous people of the Latin American region, then the pre-Columbian, pre-Latin region there. But that's the story. This is the story that we came up with. When we played Marco Polo, or when my daughter started playing Marco Polo, I was confused by that, because why are they jumping into the pool and laughing at a guy who discovered the world? Right? So it seemed out of context for me. And Marquez and a whole bunch of people said, well, they did discover a world. But what they did in that process of discovery is something that we as a group of peoples need to address. And so in Marquez's view, the lie that's written, I said the history that's written becomes a lie that is written. And if it's a lie that was written, then we have to rectify the lie. Okay. So then in the Latinized version, okay, so the version that starts to ferment amongst intellectuals and social and political activists and writers and filmmakers and politicians is this kind of Latinized version. And here, the reader or you, right, it gets an opportunity to confront the lie. Okay? And in this version, you're introduced to a history of oppression of one people over another. And in this case, you know, the domination, gradual domination of South America, certainly most prominently by the Spanish, and certainly by the French and the English and the Dutch as well. But in Marquez's, and the Portuguese, pardon me. But in Marquez's view, it's the Spanish Latin experience that he's concerned about. i.e. this layer of civilization that's brought by the conquistadores and spread through various political, social, economic, and religious institutions to dominate Latin America over time. Okay. So you've got this crazy situation where you feel like you need to tell this corrected story, this adjusted story, this liberated story. And yet you don't know how to do that. You don't have the tools to do it. You can stand on all the podiums you want. You can lead all of the political marches that you feel compelled to lead. But that wasn't enough for Marquez. How do I, as a writer, how can I connect with that? How can I lend my talent to this huge project? And so some of the paradoxes and ironies of Marquez start to come to birth there, because he's got what he's got. He's got newspapers. He's a very fine journalist. He's got the novel, right? Written originally by Cervantes, right? Don Quixote, the original novel in our Western experience, and an heir to all novels. Sorry, all novels are an heir to that one, but it's Spanish. He's got these genres that are all Western: romance, history, right? Crime. And so we start to see how do we take these existing structures and how do we use them and possibly even subvert them to our own needs. Okay, and that's, you have the birth of magic realism. So Marquez does not create magic realism. There's an author that predates Marquez, Jose Luis Borges, B-O-R-G-E-S, who is considered to be the godfather of this narrative style. This crazy mixture, as Mr. Thompson said a moment ago, of real historical events, actual characterizations, plots and conflicts and things that you expect to see in the novel, and this disconcerting and kind of mystical, magical, almost unbelievable magical layer. And I'm using my words carefully. Almost unbelievable, because one of the key things that happens in a magic realism novel, if you allow yourself to cross the fourth wall, right? Some of us can never actually read a novel on its own terms. We don't have the time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the conviction. But if you can cross that fourth wall in a novel like this one and suspend your disbelief, then those magical elements play an unbelievably important role. So how do you do this? You've got this national project, right? First of all, you tell the story in Spanish, right? Chronicle of the Death of Foretold is written in Spanish many years before it's printed in English, circulating in the Latin world long before Western readers like us got our hands on it. You use a kind of a pseudo-journalistic approach. Why would, from what you guys have heard so far, and I realize that I'm saying a lot of things, have any of you asked why, in some ways, this novel is structured kind of like a newspaper report or a piece of journalism? What would that do? What would that allow? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? That's a pretty heavy question. Yeah.
I mean, it would contrast with the magical elements a lot more, because if it's in like a newspaper, that's attributed to being really boring, and when you see something that jumps out at you and doesn't follow like the trends, then you look at it a lot more.
Beautiful. Great answer, right? So the newspaper is a vehicle, and we have trouble with this now, right? We're in a cultural time now where traditional sources of news are being inspected and questioned at a time at a depth that's pretty intense. But not when this novel's written. You've got this idea that the journalist is an objective observer, right? So that's a really great point. So you write in your own language. You kind of add this journalistic layer to give the narrative some credibility and to give the reader some things that they can hold on to. Good call. Okay? And then you have to kind of disorient the reader and get them somehow into the world that you want them to enter. And that's where Marquez, in my view, is one of the masters of reinvigorating and reimagining the capacity of language to do this. He basically renovates the language in order that it can serve the political and social means that he wants it to. So, how far are you guys into the book? Chapter 4? And it's a novella, so how many chapters are there? I can't remember. There are only 5. Oh, actually, you guys right. There's 5 pretty significant chapters, right? Okay, so you're about 80% of the way through. Wow, interdisciplinary course. So contrast, was anybody willing to tell us how their experience of reading this book has shifted since the first few pages to now? Is there anyone willing to talk about that at all? Do you feel like you're getting it? Do you feel like you're understanding it at all? Do you feel like you're lost in this hemisphere of garble? Do you feel like you're deadlining on a hospital bed? Yes, Shrenick, thanks for saving me.
So when I first read the first few pages, you're right, it was a bunch of garble. It was like, the information wasn't even going in my head. I was just reading words. There was like nothing being taken from it, right? And even if I do end up reading the last pages, like in a couple of, because it's my homework to read the book, right? So when I read the last couple of pages, I assume I will still have that little bit of garble. Like I'll have the context a little bit better, but I'll still have the garble. But I feel like just talking with your peers about it does open it up a bit.
Yeah, so this is the kind of, I'm hoping that there's a little bit of anti-garble patrol here, and part of that, like if you take time with this, and hopefully that this next part of, and kind of I'm moving towards the end part of what I want to share with you, I think will help. So magic realism, as Mr. Thompson pointed out, is this kind of a use of a recognizable narrative tools, right? The old Freytag arc, if you will, and yet this introduction of mystical, magical, unbelievable elements which defy physics, which blend the story. The story's here, it's going back and forth like this, right? Isn't it? No, it just goes in a straight line. Oh my God, no. You're back with the vicarios, you're not. Who's being interviewed? I don't remember. Who are these people? They're all being interviewed at once. Why is the guy on the floor of the side of the barn? Who's guilty, who's not, right? And on one level, that's a recognizable story, right? Matlock, right? I watched with my wife last night. There are any number of crime dramas that you see. Sometimes you get the murder at the beginning. Sometimes you get the murder at the end. Sometimes the detective's a drunk. Sometimes the detective's a woman, right? Sometimes the detective's a drunk woman. No, you know what I mean. Okay. So this idea of magical realism is intentionally intended to disorient you, right? Because if you want to go to another culture, then you have to face the culture on its own terms. Right? We can go down to Punta Cana, or we can go down to the Riviera, right? We can go to any of these cultural enclaves, and we can say that we've been in Mexico. But really, have we been in Mexico? I don't know. I think that's a really legitimate question. And I've been on those kinds of vacations too, so I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that's a fairly superficial cultural experience, right? You're not seeing Mexico on Mexico's terms. You're kind of transplanting, right, a comfy, hedonistic almost experience onto the Mexican landscape. And I think that's a fairly honest depiction of that kind of travel. But that's not what Marquez doesn't want you guys sipping Mai Tais on the beach, right? What he wants you to be able to do is he wants you to be able to get into the fabric of Latin history and Latin literature. So you disorient us? Yeah, he has to disarm the Western reader, because the Western reader has been schooled in those Marco Polo stories, right? Those are our stories, and he wants to make us let go of some of those cultural expectations as we read. Okay, so thinking about your pillars in this class, readers, writers, and texts, right? That's a really good example of readers, writers, and texts, because there's an intentional disorientation of the reader, but it's a subversive, and it's crafty, because in that disorientation, what he wants you to do is he wants you to actually let your guard down and deal with him. Right, and deal with Latin history. He wants you to let your guard down and deal with it. Okay? Come and visit my world. Not on your terms, on mine. Let me guide you. Okay? What it does too is, in a sense, where's the set? Where's the book set?
Small village in Colombia.
Yes.
Small village in Colombia.
Okay. And could you find it on a map?
No. Well, the thing is, it's like the culture itself, based on his history, is Colombian, but at the same time, it could be placed anywhere in Latin America.
Nice. Right. You know, Shakespeare and Mantua, and the great Scottish play set in here and there on the moors for Hamlet. Certainly not in England, where we could get our fingers slapped or worse. Right. Same kind of deal. So this happens anywhere in Latin America. Right. So in that sense, all the happenings of this village, right, are a microcosmic representation of anywhere. And this is one of Marquez's wonderful tricks here. So when you're reading the events in this village, remember that what Marquez wants you to do is like that snow globe at Christmas. Do you guys know what I'm talking about, or am I hopelessly aging myself here? Yeah. Am I hopelessly aging myself? You know this thing that you shake around, the snow come tumbling down, you present your Christmas list and everyone's happy, right? But it's a small representation of Christmas, right? It doesn't represent the year that your sister didn't get you anything for Christmas, does it? It doesn't represent the year that your parents got you your sister's gift by mistake, right? And it doesn't certainly represent all the gifts that you really longed for and didn't get, right? So it's not a perfect representation, but it captures that magical spirit of Christmas to an extent that it serves as a microcosm. So can Garcia Marquez tell the whole story of this part of Latin America and the part of this and that, who got liberated first and who didn't, and who was against it and who was for it? No, he can't do that. So he takes you into the fabric of one town, right, and allows that to be the landscape. Okay. So in that way, if he localizes the experience into one town, then this gives the author some real power and freedom. Okay? If you localize, and you guys might find this when you're writing. Like I find this all the time, and I still write some academic stuff, and I find it really hard to control my scope. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? In fact, my thesis advisor a couple of years ago called me Captain Scope Creep, which was not a very nice thing to say, but it was really true. So it's hard to control your scope. So how do you, in a scientific way, kind of control your variables? Right? You can't have everything at play in a lab experiment, you have to control some variables, right? You have to set some boundaries on what you can investigate. And if your scientific experiment has any value, you guys know this, then you can extrapolate, right, on those findings, and they might achieve some validity in a larger scientific community. Does this make sense? That's what Marquez is trying to do, okay, to speak scientifically. So in doing that, he can now talk about morality, he can talk about faith, he can talk about gender, he can talk about violence, he can talk about corruption, he can talk about all this stuff, right? Because we don't know where he's setting it, so that gives him some freedom, but he's controlled the setting so we can kind of get into some stuff. Okay, good. So now, oh my God. So if that's true, then wait a minute. Then I think where Mullins is taking us is that the story absolutely must happen on a number of different levels. Well, sure it does. It happens on the microcosmic level, and then it happens on the macrocosmic level. But what is in the macrocosmic level? What's he actually talking about? All right. That, okay, is where allegory comes in. All right. Bring it on. What's an allegory? Bring it. Just try it.
It's telling a story by use of another story.
Okay, that's a great place to start. Okay, absolutely, that's a great place to start. An allegory is a way of structuring a story so that by definition in an allegory, the story takes place on one level but is meant to represent meaning on another. Beautiful, okay? Okay, so I'm telling you, it's happening in this book. Okay. It's happening, okay? So, a more formal definition. Allegory is a narration or description in which events, action, character, settings, or objects represent specific abstractions or ideas. Oh, okay. Are all the townspeople nice, friendly little people? Hey, Rio, hi, I hear you're having a tough time. Let me help. Right? Is that hey, oh, you're struggling with that snow in your driveway. Hey, let me help. Is that the kind of townspeople you're meeting here? Are they nice to each other? Oh gosh, so there's a lot of tension and animosity in this town. Okay, that's interesting. And where are all the religious dudes? Do they where are they? Where?
On a boat.
Yeah, on their boats. Are they actually in the town? Oh, they're on the boats. Oh God, when we really need them. Okay, whoa, that's interesting. Where did Nassar die?
Outside his front door.
Where?
Outside his front door.
Outside his front door. Hey, what's the weather like? And who killed him? Or do we know yet?
Twins.
Oh yeah, you blame the twins, eh? Oh yeah, the twins. Yeah, they're struggling anyway with their sense of identity. You know this. Yeah. Okay, so wait a minute then. So there's a murder. That's an actual thing. The question you need to ask is, okay, yeah, so this guy gets taken out, but it's not the physical act of the death that we're interested in now. We know that there's allegory happening. We know there's a microcosm, macrocosm, and we know that Marquez is absolutely committed to turning the novel into a socio-political force that allows him to comment on the nature of Latin America, not just the fake European nature, but the real nature of what's happened in Latin America under colonial rule. Wow. So, it can't just be Nassar that dies, can it? Oh my God. So it's now we're asking, why is this structured like a crime novel? What's so great? What happens in a crime novel? What are some characteristics of a crime novel? What are some really what are some characteristics? Yes. Hey?
Mystery.
Mystery? What are some other characteristics of a crime novel or a crime piece? Yes. Justice, hopefully. Yes?
There could be climax into it.
There could be.
Suspense.
Suspense?
I was gonna say suspense.
Suspense? What are the pieces? Yes.
Redemption.
Redemption, if you're lucky. What are some of the pieces? What do you have to have a crime novel? What are some of the key pieces? Yes. A crime. Okay. What else? What else? What else do you have to have?
A detective.
A detective. Good. What else?
Like a set of people that are willing to break the law.
Oh, absolutely. People who are willing to break the law.
A novel.
Nice one. A novel, well, maybe in this case. Yes. A victim. Yeah, good one. Yes.
A law that's going to be broken.
A law that's going to be broken. Okay, good. So, what I implore you to do from here on in, because this is where Marquez is subversive. I'm going to use the novel. This is a Spanish structure. I'm going to use journalism. Okay, this is a Western concept. I'm going to use the crime genre, which is not indigenous to Latin America. I'm going to use these colonial tools. This is where I just love it so much. He's going to use these colonial tools, and in doing so, he's going to subvert the whole thing. Isn't that crazy? I'm going to use your game to redraw the rules of your game. Okay, so therefore, on one level, getting back to my starting point, the lie, I mean the victors write history. Okay? So, there you have a crime novel set in a coastal Latin American town where a bunch of gossipy townspeople accuse and counter-accuse each other until the whole narrative seems like a jungle of accusation. On the other hand, if there's something to what I'm suggesting about a microcosm, macrocosm structure in this book, and there's something valid to what I'm suggesting in terms of the subversion of those Western literary tools, the novel, the genre of crime fiction. Okay? And if it's true what I'm saying, that only through a creation like magic realism, which bucks tradition in language, which completely redraws, which actually disposes of physics, which disposes of linearity, right? Which disposes of all those things and allows the author the freedom to tell the story that he wants to tell. And by the way, there's some incredible female practitioners of magic realism who say, well, Garcia Marquez, that's pretty interesting. And kudos to you. But I think you might be leaving a few things out. And if you're interested in a more of a feminization of this same project, then I encourage you to read a woman named Isabel Allende. Because what she does is she takes up where she believes that Marquez fails to bring us. Okay? But, so if you believe that Marquez and others are onto something, if you believe that I'm not leading you astray by suggesting some of these things to you, then the book allegorically becomes a fractured village, and here Marquez may be commenting on the effect that centuries of foreign domination have had on the capacity of Latin Americans to be unified at all. Okay? Where centuries of neglect and oppression by the church and foreign economic powers has led to the most fundamental crime. the murder of Nassar? No, that's the microcosm. And I'll leave you to speculate in this framework what the murder actually means. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you about an author that is definitely one of my literary heroes. And Mr. Thompson, I appreciate you giving me this wonderful audience. Thanks for participating, and I hope that you find a few of my comments helpful in untangling this very complex and deceptively complex novella. All the best.
Wait a minute, where are you going?
No.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you mind if we ask a few questions before you leave?
No, not at all.
So I was reminded while Mr. Mullins was speaking about an anecdote I had with a student pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. And pre-COVID, we got along really well and had a good rapport, and the student was working really hard, and it was awesome. And then we had this sort of during COVID moment where it was the next semester and wearing masks and everything, and the student was completely different in the class and was withdrawing and not getting the work done. And I approached them and said, like, hey, what's going on here? What's changed? And they said, well, you used to like me last year, and we had this really interesting connection, and this year you don't like me. I was like, what are you talking about? I don't like you. Why do you say that? Well, because last year you smiled at me constantly. You always were cheery and happy and smiling. And this year you're not smiling at all. And I said, is it possible that me having the mask on means you can't see my face? I took it off and I was smiling. He's like, oh my gosh, it might be the mask. And I had the student after COVID with the masks off again, and everything was totally normal. But I have to ask you, in a situation like that, we have multiple narratives. We've got the narrative of the student, the narrative of the teacher, the different perspectives on the story and what had happened and how this relationship had apparently changed over time. Was the student's version of understanding the reality of that situation? We both experienced the exact same reality, and that student had a completely different interpretation of our rapport as a result of that. Is that the fault of the student? Is that my fault for not seeing it and for putting a mask on? Or is it the fault of circumstance? And I think Marquez asks us this question throughout the text is, how does Rio see the story? If we narrate what happened here today, Rio's going to tell a very different story than Rick. Rick might have different moments of emphasis where he's like, yeah, and this one time I said this one thing and it made everybody laugh and it was a good time. And whereas Rio will say, wow, Mr. Mullins' Spanish is absolutely horrible, or his Portuguese or whatever it is. You know,
I tried my best to elevate my game.
We're all going to take these different moments away. But there was one moment, Mr. Mullins, in a previous lecture you gave, and I wanted to just ask you about it. And I would encourage students, maybe we could take 3 questions.
Yeah.
So Mr. Mullins, in his previous lecture, said that Marquez creates a new language to express his country's experience, and the language he creates is magic realism. And as you've confessed today, he's one of many people who created this language.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about that. And we also have to note that this entire lecture was delivered in front of a map that most people would consider upside down, while he's wearing a hat that says unreliable narrator. So take what he says with a grain of salt here.
Yeah,
but Mr. Mullins, what were you thinking about when you spoke about that?
Well,
do you remember saying that?
I think I backtracked a touch on that. I feel like that statement's a bit too categorical now, because I think that his use of language is elegant and beautiful, and his use of literary tools is masterful and quite bold, and certainly deeply politically motivated. I think we could quibble on whether or not that constitutes a new language. So I'd like to just kind of maybe backtrack a little bit. But I think what I was thinking about was, how do you, if you are in a position, in this case, I think of trying to represent a national experience which you feel has placed people in the position of being the victim. How do you describe that in a way that your country people and the people who you really want to reach will listen? And so I think Marquez felt that he could not write a conventional novel and have that outcome. I think he said, I have to reimagine. So I think maybe reimagining the language in a fundamental way would be more accurate. But I need to reimagine the language in order to tell this story with the integrity with which I wish it to be told.
Thank you. Let's take a few questions from you guys then. Is there anybody who is thinking about anything, or do you want to respond to anything or challenge Mr. Mullins on any of his assumptions? Or
Please do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
just hold that.
Oh, awesome.
I was just going to ask, do you think the fact that Santiago Nassar himself was not originally Latin American and came from from Arabic descent, do you think that, like him being the outsider, do you think that also impacts the way the allegory is told and what the reader should take away from it?
150% yes. 150% yes. It's crucial to the story. Now, I'm not going to tell you why, because your question should wait to suggest to me that you are on to the allegory. Your question suggests that you're onto the allegory, because it's not just this guy. It's what he represents that's important. Not the literal character. It's what he represents. And so, therefore, all of the different conditions upon which he comes and how he is treated and how he is considered and thought about by the locals is actually super important.
We have another question.
Yes.
Can you come back and teach us, please?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, and you guys, so my heritage is, I got a little trace of Brazilian, a little trace of Norwegian, a little trace of Austrian, and a trailer load of Irish. Okay, so I don't want you to get me to wax poetic too much. I've already done enough of that. The Irish do tend to talk lyrically about their own experiences. I will just say that this feels really nice to be with you, and I appreciate you saying that. And if Mr. Thompson feels like there's another chance for me to come in and give you 45 minutes away from the regular curriculum, I will encourage him to do that. Thank you very much. That's a very nice thing to say. Yes.
I would also like you to come back and teach with us too.
What are you guys studying next?
We've got Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Oh, do you now?
But Mr. Mullins, we wanted to share with you our seminars today. So,
yes, I want to hear it.
Let's
Yes,
wrap
enough
it up.
about me.
We'll hop into our groups, and you get to listen to them talk now.
Oh, I can't wait.
Thank you, Mr. Let's give our appreciation to Mr. Mullins.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.